All right, so for chapter 9, we look at graphing linear relations and using tables of values to come up with equations and finding patterns. So it combines a lot of stuff that you've learned kind of into one unit. So the first thing I want to go over is kind of just a reminder on how to graph stuff using a table of values. All right, so here we have a graph. All right, and this is just showing us one quadrant of the graph or one section. So usually what happens is when we have something called coordinate grids, they actually have 4 quadrants. So if I draw it like this, all right, here we have 0, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this way we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And that kind of looks familiar, right, to this top side that I have here, but that's only one quadrant of the graph, all right? We need to see what's going to happen to the other quadrants. So what we notice is if we look at the up and down one, the vertical one, okay, that's what we call the y-axis, okay? This is the y-axis, the one that runs up and down, okay? This right here is called the x-axis, okay? It's the one that runs horizontally or side to side. So now we are used to seeing this table, right? When we were doing a graphing unit, that's how we graphed our line graphs or bar graphs. We're not used to kind of seeing these other parts of the coordinate grid. And so what I look at when I look at the y-axis, when I go up, the numbers are positive, just like a thermometer. But when I go down on my thermometer, the numbers become -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. And the same thing goes for our x-axis, okay? I have my positive numbers on this side. I have my negative numbers on this side. All right, so what we're combining is kind of a horizontal line graph and a vertical line graph, and we're putting them together into one big coordinate grid. So now if we just go up to our simple one, all right, and I want to graph a coordinate, all right, coordinates come in these points. So you're going to have brackets. The first number is going to be the x value, and the second value is going to be the y value. So for example, if I have 2, 4, all right, what I'm graphing here, the 2 is the x value. So I go to the x-axis and I find the 2. 1, 2. Okay, so I'm here. All right, great. But that's not my point yet. All right, I can't put a point down there yet because we also have a y value. We add some height to that point. And so we look at the 4, that's the y value. So I look at the 4, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the 4. So I'm going to be at the 2. And I go up 4, and that is where the point 2, 4 would be. Okay, let's try another point. Let's try something else. Let's do 7, 1. All right, so looking at it, we look at our y-axis, our x-axis, okay? It's going to be our x value. So let's look at our x-axis, our horizontal one. We find 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great, we're at 7 here. And then we look at how much height do I have? 1. Okay, I'm going up to 1. And that is where my point 7, 1 would go. All right? And what ends up happening is what you're going to find when we graph them is we're actually going to make a line using all the points. We're going to create something called a linear relation. All right, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of points that are all going to end up on this line, and we're going to actually be able to find equations for that line as you move forward. Okay, that's not until grade 9, right? But we want to be able to set them up and graph them and notice patterns so that next year when you have to create those equations, you're all set up for it. Okay. So that's the first part. That's just graphing. So now let's go down to our coordinate grid. All right. And let's do something based off of a table of values. All right. So a table of values, it gives you all those points, but it gives you multiple at the same time. So it's going to give you the x, it's going to give you the y, and then it's going to give you a bunch, and ideally they should end up making a line for you, okay? So for these ones, we're just going to practice graphing. So let's say this is -2 and 3, -1 and 4, 0 and 5, 1 and 6, 2 and 7, okay? So this is going to be our table of values. And so what that means is when we look at each section, that's giving us the point. So it's -2, 3, that's the point. -1, 4, that's the coordinate that we need to graph. And all for the rest of them, okay? The only thing is they put them in a chart so they can give us a bunch of coordinates. So now let's go up to the front. Let's graph the first one. We need -2 and 3 is that first coordinate point. So let's go up here, okay? We need to graph -2 and 3. So remember, this is the x value. So I look at my x-axis and I find -2. Okay, these are positives on this right side, so I need to go to the left side. -2 is right here. Okay, perfect. And then I need to add a y value. If we look at that, it's +3. So I'm going to go up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's where the 3 is. That's where the -2 is. There's my first point. Okay, then let's go down. Let's find our next point. Our next point is -1 and 4. Okay, so let's go find the -1. That's our y, our -1, 4. So -1 is our x value, and the 4 is our y value. So let's go to our x-axis, find the -1. Great. And then 4 is positive, so we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there's our next point. All right, let's find the second one, 0 and 5. Okay, so our x value is 0, and we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and what's going to happen is when you graph them, we're going to notice they're actually going to form a line. All right, and that is what's known as a linear relation. All right, and there would be an equation that would represent this pattern. Okay, and that's kind of our next section, is finding what pattern, like what is happening to each of these values. Because if you kind of notice, you know, as I go up in x values, my y goes up by 1. All right, that's a pattern, okay? And we're going to use those patterns to come up with simple equations, okay, for our linear relations, okay, or equations that form a line when you plot those points, okay? Plotting points means we take that coordinate point and we put it on the graph.